We continue to follow breaking news tonight in the search for the body of 4-year-old Javeayah Harris after her parents confessed to killing her and her mother admitted to disposing of her body. Today, dozens of cars lined the outside of their home as investigators and the coroner's office sifted through evidence.
Emergency, 39, Hillsborough Street. I can't find my baby. Mickley Herring's voice is shaking. She tells the dispatcher her daughter was playing outside. That she went in to cook dinner. That when she came back out, Javeayah was gone. Somewhere behind that voice, according to what investigators would later allege, was a woman who already knew her daughter had been dead for weeks. Welcome back to True Crime Case. If you haven't watched the first video on this case, go do that now. Link below. This is where it goes further. Because to understand how a mother makes a call like that, we have to go back. Not to June 30th. Further than that. Back to the moment this family's story actually started to break. November 2025. Clinton, South Carolina. Months before anyone outside this family had ever heard the name Javeayah Harris, police were called to a small apartment for something that, on paper, looked almost ordinary. A verbal argument between Javeayah Harris and Mickley Herring. He was leaving. She didn't want his family picking him up. Officers found no injuries. No charges. Just a report, filed and forgotten. Nobody flagged it as a warning sign. At the time, there was nothing to warn anyone about. Not yet. By spring of 2026, the family had moved again, this time to Beach Island, a quiet corner of Aiken County near Hillsborough Street and Ridgecrest Road. A new home. A new start, on the surface. Somewhere in the weeks that followed, investigators allege sometime between May 1st and June 15th, that surface broke. Arrest warrants allege Javeayah was injured while in her parents' care. They allege Mickley Herring caused those injuries. They allege Javeayah Harris knew and did nothing. No hospital. Number 911 call. No report. And somewhere in that same window, Javeayah died. Sit with that for a second. While her name was still just a name only her family knew. While there was no search, no headlines, no community praying for her, investigators allege she was already gone. According to the warrants, Mickley Herring did not call anyone. Instead, she is alleged to have disposed of her daughter's body at a location outside Aiken County entirely, and then gone on living beside that secret, 9 months pregnant, in a house where a 4-year-old's absence had already become normal. For weeks, nothing happened. No call. No report. No search. Then came June 30th. We don't know why that night. Out of all the days that had already passed since May, nothing in the public record explains why Mickley Herring picked up the phone that Tuesday and not any night before it. That question hasn't been answered. It might be the one thing that decides how this case ends in court. If this story has you wondering the same thing we are, subscribe now, because we're staying on this case until there's an answer. At 8:45 that evening, the call came in. Herring described Javeayah in loving detail, the pink Minnie Mouse pajamas, the beads clipped into her braids, how smart and talkative she was for 4. When the dispatcher asked about any health conditions, Herring mentioned autism, though no formal diagnosis had ever been made. She said she was 39 weeks pregnant, struggling to search the yard alone, and needed help. Within the hour, Javeayah returned home from running errands. He later told a reporter he'd gone out for candy for Javeayah, gas, and a few other stops, to find deputies already on the property. Family members had begun searching before officers arrived. When asked directly, on record, whether he knew what had happened to his daughter, he said no. By morning, the FBI's Columbia Field Office and the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division had joined the case. Within a day, over 200 officers were on the ground, backed by helicopters, drones, and KA-9 units, working across thousands of acres of land that, according to what we now know, never held what everyone was searching for. A local church opened its doors as a staging ground. A community began to pray. And in the middle of that search, July 1st, Michaeli Herring gave birth to a second child. Hold that image for a moment. A mother, in a hospital bed, welcoming a newborn, while 200 officers searched the woods for a daughter investigators alleged she already knew was gone. Not everyone believed the story being told. Former neighbors from the family's time in Union County came forward. One woman, identified only as Miss Young, described a very different Javeayah than the one being searched for. "She real sweet," she said. "She would not cross the road. She won't walk by herself. She liked to hold people's hands when she walks, even when she walked to the refrigerator, she still want to hold your hand." Other neighbors said they used to feed her, bathe her, and send her home in clean clothes, back when she seemed unsupervised at the old apartment complex. It was the first crack in the story the whole state had been searching around. If a child wouldn't let go of an adult's hand to cross her own living room, how does she vanish alone into the woods behind a chicken coop? By July 3rd, the visible search began to wind down. Officials said the work continued quietly. Nobody outside a small circle knew just how far that work had already gone. Then, July 4th, Sheriff Marty Sawyer stood before the cameras. Sadly, the night of the 911 call on June 30th, when that call was made, it was already too late to save Javeayah, he said. Investigators believed she'd been deceased for at least a month. That day, both parents were arrested. Both charged with homicide by child abuse. Herring, additionally, with filing a false police report. The next day, July 5th, both stood before Magistrate Judge Ronald Thornton and were denied bond. Herring told the court she worked for Transcom, paid bi-weekly at $1,300. The judge ruled her income too high to qualify for a court-appointed attorney. John Maria, when asked the same question, struggled to answer. He eventually said he worked for DHL Bridgestone but didn't know how much he brought home each week. He was denied a public defender too. Their newborn was placed in the custody of a family member. That same evening, Aiken gathered for a candlelight vigil at the alley downtown, holding light for a little girl most of them had never met. One person there put it simply, they showed up for a child they didn't know, because there was still love in their hearts for her. This is the part of the case most people think is the end. It isn't. On July 6th, the arrest warrants themselves were released, and with them, the detail that reshaped everything anyone thought they understood. Both parents, according to those documents, had confessed. Herring is alleged to have caused the injuries that led to Javeayah's death under circumstances manifesting an extreme indifference to human life, and to have led investigators to where she said her daughter could be found, nearly 2 hours away, near where Fairfield and Chester counties meet, along Debutary Creek, leading into Rocky Creek Lake on the Catawba River. If investigators were told exactly where to look, why, days later, is Javeayah still not found? Search boats from SLED and the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources went into that water. Investigators called it an area of interest, and have said nothing more publicly about how they found it. Back in Aiken, on July 7th and 8th, they returned to the Harris home, this time with specialized forensic equipment, going over ground they'd already searched once before. If you want to be here the moment there's a break in this case, a location, a discovery, anything. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This is a story we're not walking away from. Outside that home, a memorial keeps growing. Stuffed animals. Balloons. Flowers, left by strangers who never knew her name until it was too late to matter to her. As of now, Javeayah's body has not been recovered. A circuit court judge is expected to rule on bond for both parents within 30 days. No cause of death has been released. No one has said whether one parent bears more responsibility than the other, only that both now face decades in prison if convicted. If you have any information connected to this case, the Aiken County Sheriff's Office has a tip line open, linked below. There is still no verdict. No trial date beyond the bond ruling still ahead. What there is, right now, is a confession, a location, and a county still waiting for the one thing that hasn't happened, bringing Javeayah home. So we'll leave you with the same question no one's been able to answer yet. Out of every day that passed after May, why that night? What do you think finally made her pick up the phone? Tell us what you think in the comments.